I discovered the 3 unexpected tricks that help transform my fitness routine from ordinary to battle ready. The first skill that is super important is your cardio endurance. In a fantasy world, we all know that they follow a similar pattern and similar tropes. One of the first things we see is the long walk to somewhere. Your cardiovascular endurance is super important, which is going to be things like walking and hiking. You don't have to run. There are 2 ways that you can improve your walking, and those are really going to depend on your fitness level and where you're starting. If you are someone who doesn't walk a lot already, find your baseline total and start just adding a couple thousand steps a day and work your way up to those higher numbers, your 10,000. The other thing you could do is if you're someone who hits those steps a lot, I'm talking about the people who maybe are running, maybe you have an active job like a server or a nurse or a construction or a teacher, add weight to walks outside of your job, whether it's a weighted vest, you're carrying a rucksack, you can strap your kid to the front of you. Adding that weight gives you a little bit more resistance, so even though your distance is the same, you are getting stronger. If you're familiar with Nesta from A Court of Silver Flames, you all know a sore subject for us is that when she was trying to escape the House of Wind down 10,000 steps, she would go halfway and then decide it was too hard and go right back up, even though logically it is easier to go downstairs than upstairs. But if we work on our cardio endurance, we can get down the first time, get out, get back to town, get back to living the life we were living before they trapped us in the house. So don't underestimate that cardio endurance for your survival in the fantasy world. The second thing you need to do to get ready for that battle in the fantasy world is going to be muscular endurance. This is going to help you keep your sword up because we can be strong and do that 1 rep max. But if you're fighting more than one person or you miss, that 1 rep max is not going to save your life. We need to be able to endure long enough to finish the fight. And something a lot of people don't think about when it comes to muscular endurance is that that's also how you stay on the dragon. If you can't hold your legs tight enough to stay on, as soon as they fly, you're coming off. The best way to start for building muscular endurance is just static holds. So those are your planks, your wall sits, your squat holds. You can do them anywhere that you want. You don't need a gym. You don't need to go outside. You can do them in your house, no matter how big or small it is. Anything that holds you in a position and like you start to get a little shaky the longer you hold it, and time yourself. Maybe you just start at 15 seconds. Time yourself and build that up. That's going to help those muscles be able to hold longer, which is what we want. The other thing muscular endurance is good for in both fantasy worlds and practical life is holding things up. So I used the example earlier of swinging your sword. You want to be able to do that for until the battle's over. But it can also be carrying the groceries in, lifting something over your head. Maybe your kid isn't feeling good and you need to hold them. Holding them, especially if you're checking on them, you need that muscular endurance to push them in and out. If you've read Quicksilver, you'll see that one of the key examples of being able to endure is the main character. Please don't ask me to pronounce her name, but we see her fight 3 knights in armor, and she even talks about how she had practiced over and over again to hit the tiny little spot between their armor to take them out, and took out 3 guards. Most of us, if we're coming from nothing, are not going to take out 3 guards, especially in armor. So she lasted through that battle so much that they were impressed that they took her to the queen alive. One of the things she talks about is when she was being trained by the rebels, they would drill her with like a wooden sword. That's why you see a lot of the practice swords in fantasy when they're doing their training montages, because they're not necessarily looking to build their striking skill. They're using a heavier sword to help keep their arms up and get used to swinging that sword and keeping it up. In most battles, very rarely are you going to bring your sword arm down and let it rest. You are in constant motion until the fight is over. So muscular endurance is super important to get through those battles with everything still attached. And the third skill that you need to survive fantasy world is going to be flexibility. Because let's face it, something's going to get thrown in your path. You might have to go under something, over something, climb something, fit through a window. Those are going to be super important. And the thing is when we train flexibility, most of the time you're going to have this in your cool down as you stretch out, and it's also going to make you less sore. And if you're in a constant high stress situation where you could be facing multiple battles in a row, those cool downs and those stretches and that flexibility are going to come in really important, because you are more likely to not win that second battle if you are still stiff and sore from the first battle. Some of the easiest ways to train flexibility are going to be after you work out. You always want to stretch a warm muscle, not a cold muscle. So as we're doing that, that can just be simply stretching routines, throwing in any kind of yoga moves, those quad stretches, downward dog, whatever body part that you are working on, and working through those. Foam rollers are really great too, because they help kind of rub out that soreness and get everything moving so that you're nice and flexible the next time. So when we think of flexibility, my favorite example is Inej from Six of Crows. They called her the little assassin, little ghost. She could climb up walls, walk a tightrope, make sure she could things like acrobatics. And those are very important because sometimes we need to be stealthy and sneaky, and that's not going to work if we get ourselves stuck somewhere because we don't bend that way. Don't overlook that flexibility if you want to survive in the fantasy world and be less sore in the regular everyday world. If you are trying to spice up your workouts, make them a little more fantasy based, don't forget to include that muscular endurance, muscular strength, and flexibility. If you want more help with it, check out my community below. We go through all of these things and more.